The gaming world has generated billions in revenue in recent years, but the current reality is very different. Although global sales remained huge, Newzoo estimates approximately $184 billion in 2023, only 0.6% less than in 2022. The sector is experiencing a deep crisis. Since the beginning of 2023, and especially in 2024, there has been a historic wave of mass layoffs. Sources such as Obsidian Tracking documented approximately 14,600 job losses in 2024, exceeding the approximately 10,500 in 2023. Even giant companies were not spared. Microsoft cut almost 3,000 jobs, Unity 1,500, Sony around 1,000, Electronic Arts around 700, and Take-Two another 600. In Spain, the CSIV video game union laments that our main task is to provide support for all the layoffs that are taking place. In total, more than 15,000 developers are expected to lose their jobs between 2023 and 2024 worldwide. These cuts are due to several factors. There was a hiring boom during the pandemic, many studios opened new projects, and then the market correction came. As expert Antonio José Planels explains, the current model is not viable. Games with budgets of hundreds of millions were canceled, titles are becoming increasingly expensive, and many as-a-service projects have not yielded the expected results. Merged or poorly managed companies, including failed investments in the metaverse or blockchain, are adjusting their workforces to lower costs. The result is that in 2024, the number of studio employees was much lower, even though the global industry nearly doubled its workforce after the pandemic. Journalist Matthew Ball agrees. In 2022, there were about 8,500 departures. In 2023, more than 10,500, and in 2024, more than 14,000, with 2025 continuing the trend, albeit at a slower pace. In the first half of 2024, there were almost 11,000 layoffs in the global industry, more than in all of 2023. By the end of 2024, large companies had cut tens of thousands of jobs. In the US and Europe, many AAA teams were decimated. The main reason is the post-bubble adjustment. With an excess of studies and games in development, only the most profitable products survive. The global economic slowdown is also forcing publishers to control expenses, reducing staff where they can. In addition, current high costs, AAA games exceeding $100 or $200 million, create risk. If a title fails, the financial hole forces staff cuts. Affected professionals face unemployment in a difficult market. Many complain that their studios handled the cuts poorly. For example, nearly 100 employees of Build a Rocket Boy published an open letter in 2025 denouncing unbearable levels of overtime, crunch, and poor management following a mass layoff. Working conditions were already tough, and this instability causes anxiety. People who manage to find work often do so in smaller studios or switch industries. Several projects have been canceled or delayed. Games that took decades to develop are sometimes left unfinished. A prime example is Conquered, 2024. This shooter-as-a-service had an estimated budget of $400 million, but sold only 25,000 copies. Conquered had to shut down its servers, and even the studio was dissolved. In Spain, the big studios are showing signs of uncertainty. According to El País, the national sector had a turnover of 2.4 billion euros in 2024, but also saw layoffs and closures of several local companies. Another major source of conflict is microtransactions and payment systems within games. It is increasingly common to purchase items or advantages within games using real money. This generates controversy for several reasons: lack of transparency, risk of gambling addiction, and aggressive practices. For example, the European Consumers Organization, BEUC, reported the lack of regulation of these purchases to the EU, warning that virtual currency systems hide the real cost and encourage impulsive spending. The BEUC points out that these mechanics can lead players, especially minors, to invest much more than planned. The phenomenon is not insignificant. In 2020, microtransactions generated more than 46 billion euros in revenue, 25% of the global total for video games, and their use is skyrocketing in popular games, FIFA Ultimate Team, Fortnite, Genshin Impact, etc. This model has its defenders, it keeps games free, but also harsh critics. Many players complain that it ends up transforming the video game into a commercial platform. An academic study indicates that micropayments are sometimes designed to disguise the real cost until players are mentally and financially committed. Gacha games, typical on mobile devices, introduce randomness and require spending to progress. When the purchase of functional items grants competitive advantages, as in some modes of FIFA or Genshin Impact, this is referred to as pay-to-win. Titles with these mechanics are criticized because they can upset the balance. Players who pay more have an advantage over those who do not spend. As a Uruguayan analysis points out, these systems that accelerate progress or provide exclusive items tend to be more criticized, as they can create a pay-to-win environment. Another typical complaint is that games seem designed to induce spending. Slow progression designs, timers, and urgent offers push users to pay to advance. A few years ago, an attempt was made to introduce NFTs into games, promising digital ownership of items. The community reacted hostilely. For example, Ubisoft's announcement about its Quartz NFTs in Ghost Recon was almost unanimously rejected. It received 96% dislikes on YouTube. The pressure was such that Ubisoft removed the promotional video. Other companies canceled similar projects in the face of criticism, such as Team 17 with Worms NFT. In 2024, the trend is for most major publishers to avoid NFTs due to rejection by players and experts who consider them a speculative risk that distracts from the game itself. In short, these business models are very profitable for companies and threaten to grow even more, but they generate great frustration in the community. According to data, franchises such as FIFA and Fortnite represent the highest revenue from microtransactions in 2024, fueling ethical debates. Players and organizations warn of potential abuse and call for greater regulation. The consensus among many gamers is that the industry must seek other, more balanced forms of financing because the current model is not viable in the long term. Users also face video games that often arrive incomplete or with bugs. It is not uncommon for a big game to need a day-one patch or show significant errors upon release. Although the list of notable titles from recent years is long, many major releases had bugs that required updates to fix them. For example, paid expansions raised doubts. The first Starfield DLC, Shattered Space 2024, disappointed critics and players alike for having very little new content in relation to its price, €30, with repetitive missions that gave the impression of a shortage of new features. Games as a service also suffer from this problem. Skull and Bones was released in 2024 as a paid 8-hour game, but was criticized for its repetitive mechanics and the constant feeling that there was a lack of content in the open map. In general, the tendency to cut or postpone content, leaving players thirsty for new mechanics, is seen in many modern titles. Many developments still suffer from crunch, excessive working hours to meet deadlines. In recent years, there has been pressure to end this culture, but extreme cases still exist. Economist Matthew Ball points out that improving conditions, benefits, less crunch, is raising the hourly cost of development. And the workers themselves have sounded the alarm. For example, Nearly 100 employees of Build a Rocket Boy publicly demanded better practices after denouncing unbearable overtime and poor management at their studio. This affects the final quality. Exhausted or time-pressed teams sometimes release less polished products. It is increasingly common for games to offer only a bare minimum in their initial version, with good add-ons to complete the experience. Especially in online games, many features or characters only arrive via DLC or updates. An article in Zataka summed up the criticism well. Buying a game no longer guarantees you have the whole thing because many titles are sold in editions that boast of being incomplete, with season passes required to access full game modes. Titles such as For Honor even force you to invest hundreds of additional euros if you want to unlock all the extra content. In short, the accumulation of errors, cut content, and the need for post-launch patches leaves many players feeling like they've bought a bones that they have to add muscle to later. This generates massive frustration. Releases that were once celebrated due to the prestige of the series or the hope placed in the developer are now received with caution. Several analysts comment that this situation is closely linked to financial pressure. There is a rush to monetize, cut costs, or meet deadlines, sometimes at the expense of quality. The balance is evident in the relationship with studios. Failed games can destroy reputations, as in the case of Concord, or erode the trust of the community. Finally, another serious conflict is the toxicity that prevails in many gaming communities. The online environment, chat rooms, forums, social media, amplifies abusive behavior. Studies and institutions have been denouncing online harassment for years. In 2024, we continue to see cases of insults based on gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, among others. A report cited by the World Economic Forum notes that 77% of female gamers have experienced gender-specific discrimination, insults, sexual comments, etc. In addition, 28% of all gamers who experience harassment end up avoiding certain games due to their poor reputation for hostility. This indicates that the toxic environment drives away part of the audience and can damage the image of a title. Riot Games, for example, comments year after year on measures against hate in League of Legends, considered one of the games with the most incidents of this type. However, toxicity is not only verbal. Mass campaigns have led to personal harassment. In 2023, several fans of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth attacked actress Brianna White, voice of Aerith, for her performance, until the actress herself publicly asked the community to relax, and Ubisoft/Square Enix warned of sanctions against harassers on their servers. Many players attribute a game's flaws to its creators and sometimes take their anger out directly on them. Independent developers have expressed this. Valve published an internal document advising creators not to get involved in hateful discussions because it's a battle you're not going to win. This reflects that even large platforms recognize how difficult it is to protect the team from trolls and haters. The authors of an independent game, Coquette Dragoon, shared this advice from Valve after receiving harsh and unfair criticism. The idea is that ignoring malicious comments is the only strategy. In short, the global gaming community is fragmented. On the one hand, there are passionate gamers willing to defend their favorite games. But there is also a lot of aggressive behavior that has led to campaigns such as #GamersRiseUp, irony with Gamergate, or debates about moderation. Some media outlets even warned that in 2024, outbreaks of coordinated hate are resurging on social media. Companies are struggling with chat filters, moderators, and sanctions, but the culture of hate has become normalized in certain gaming circles. This affects the general mood. 1 in 4 harassed players stop playing titles in which they experienced hostility, and several developers have stated that excessive toxicity is making them reconsider their dealings with the public. In short, the video game industry is experiencing a clash of realities. On the one hand, it remains one of the world's largest sources of entertainment, with profits greater than cinema and music. On the other, it faces profound and contradictory problems. Record layoffs show that the current development model, bigger and more ambitious than ever, is unsustainable without correction. At the same time, monetization and community practices have generated rejection even among gamers themselves, calling into question the industry's priorities. For many gamers, the feeling is bittersweet. We love video games, but we are tired of the crises surrounding our favorite studios and forums. The question remains, can the industry steer this situation toward a more balanced and healthy scenario? What do you think? Leave us your comment and tell us what you think should change in video games today.